We went to the NBA Finals. Why are we trading the best player, the franchise player? How are we trading the franchise player? You went to the NBA Finals. He's supposed to have a statue. Hell yeah. He's supposed to have a statue.
Loyalty is a big word for me, and I was trying to stay by that.
10 years from now, I don't know. I don't think I'll probably bury me and Jay by then. Or we bury ourselves.
They made the decision. I don't know why.
This new management is putting profit over fans. Profit over fans.
This loyalty never fades away, and apparently, that's only a one-way street.
Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis in a first. It's like Rob Pelinka looked in the mirror and said those words 3 times, and boom, all of a sudden he landed his next generational superstar. After fleecing the absolute idiot in Nico Harrison, who approached him about trading Luka freaking Doncic. The same Nico Harrison that traded for Kyrie Irving when everyone said it was a bad idea, and subsequently cobbled together a legitimate finals contender when no one thought it was possible. You're telling me that just out of the blue, he decided that the franchise player, a potential future top 10 player of all time, should just be traded for pennies on the dollar. Please, it doesn't add up. How do you make your franchise player, your city's pride and joy, cry in the middle of the night? How do you keep negotiations with just one team and allow them to strong-arm you into a weaker deal? How do you let go of Luka Doncic, Nico Harrison? How?
There's some unique things about his contract that we had to pay attention to.
There it is. If you haven't checked out my last video on the CBA, I cover the growing fear of NBA governors, paying for contenders, and how the NBA is explicitly making it easier for lazy and cheap owners to be lazy and cheap. Highly recommend. It's got some good memes. But yeah, in the NBA, like I said a few years, ironically enough, in LA, money talks. Not even talks, like screams, yells, like Mark Cuban sold the Dallas Mavericks a year ago to the Adelson family, which in itself came with a flurry of issues, the least of which was that the Adelsons don't care about basketball. Mark Cuban himself said they're not basketball people. In fact, he actually sold the team for non-basketball reasons, aka that the Adelsons run one of the biggest global gambling corporations in the entire world, and are actively trying to bring casinos to Texas, where gambling is currently illegal. Now, for anyone who's seen my Jonte Porter video, you'll see my strong, I'm kind of plugging a bit, you'll see my strong stance against sports gambling, backed with scientific and anecdotal evidence, and how all professional American sports leagues are ignoring this on purpose. Mark Cuban, ever the businessman, wants to bring casinos inside of sports arenas to make the gambling experience during games as seamless as possible. That's why he turned down extra money from other potential owners in order to make this dream happen. We all know there's no such thing as a good billionaire, of course, but most of them are able to hide it pretty well. The Adelsons have made no such attempt to do so. They've been involved in political, labor, and media scandals. I'm not gonna touch it here because I don't want them to touch me, pause. But let's just say, anyone who receives a Presidential Medal of Freedom from Donald Trump after being his #1 political donator is evil. I don't care, I don't care. Now, why is that important for basketball, Kip, you might be asking? Well, because I'm introducing you to the capability of this ownership group. Keep this in mind. The Adelson family purchased the Dallas Mavericks to integrate sports and gambling. That's it. There's no love for the game, no passion, no childhood joy. Just the bands. And I mean, we already see what happens when owners just care for the bands. Just look at the Reinsdorf campaign in Chicago or John Fisher in Oakland. The fans, the players, the league aren't the main priority. It's the bands. Now you might be saying, Kip Kame, are you insinuating that the Adelson family orchestrated the worst trade in NBA history on purpose?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I am.
That was stupid. Let's get back to the video. Let's look at the facts. Number 1, the move was made because, according to the son of the Adelson family and current Mavericks governor Patrick Dumont, it was a business decision that would preserve the Mavericks' financial flexibility. Whoa, red flag on the play. This is saying that they didn't want to pay, in Rob Pelinka's words, a top 3 basketball player in the universe, what he was owed. Below it, actually. And with this in mind, Nico Robinson's explanation made no sense.
He was going to be able to decide make his own decision at some point of whether he wants to be here or not, whether we want to supermax him or not, or whether he wants to opt out. It's a matter of, once you put that out there, they accept or they don't, and at that point you kind of you're on the clock.
No, that couldn't be it. Because you're able to pay him $10 million more than any other team. Of course he's not gonna leave. I mean, that's literally why they made the supermax. I mean, Luka, were you thinking of leaving?
Absolutely not.
Then about being on the clock. Well, 1, the supermax is a 5-year extension, and 80s is out in 2 before he has a player option. So what the hell does that mean? And 2, aren't you always on the clock? Isn't that your job? I say this to say that, and I think very obviously, that Nico Harrison is lying through his teeth. It's pretty clear that the Adelson family wants to avoid the supermax struggle that every single competing team has had to deal with in the past 8 years since its inception, and wants to, like hell, avoid the second apron, which only affects teams that have a Supermax player. Most teams in this situation would at least sign the player to the Supermax before casting them off, like the Timberwolves. But the Adelson family didn't even want to go that far, trading their Supermax star before that was even possible. I'm going to refer to Henry Abbott's True Hoop article about this whole shebang. Great piece, by the way, great author. He talks about how the Dallas owners are the real reason behind the trade, and points to an interview with Nico Harrison once done at Harvard. Take a listen.
There's definitely, owners will put constraints on you. They might say, hey, we don't want to go in the tax this year for whatever reason, and that's going to put a constraint on in terms of what you're able to get done if they're not willing to pay the tax.
This goes for even the most top-class organizations, by the way. I had a chance to chat with Mike Dunleavy Jr., the GM of the Warriors, and this was during the time that Klay was still on the Warriors. And I had to ask him, how on earth are you guys going to keep Klay with the second apron in place? And he told me basically that they wanted to keep Klay, but literally he said it came down to hope. Just hoping that Joe Lacob would pay for it. And obviously, we saw what happened. Follow my Twitter, I'm gonna post the pic with me and him. So, if guys like Joe Lacob and Steve Ballmer made moves to avoid the second apron, think about a group like the Adelsons, who have zero love for the game. There is no doubt in my mind that they told Nico Harrison, do not dare even touch that hoe at any cost. Now, with that in mind, Nico now had the ridiculous task of trading one of the 3 best players in basketball for a guy who wouldn't take up the max. Basically, make a trade that doesn't make sense and make it make sense. So let's just think about basic negotiation skills. I took a negotiation class taught by Sam Hinkie and the 49ers team president, some of the brightest minds in the sports world, right? In class, they talked about the importance of having an M+1, meaning a backup plan that you could use for leverage in negotiations. Never was it mentioned that you have an M-1. That trade broke the fundamental laws of negotiation. For the sake of secrecy? Yeah, right. Nico Harrison and Rob Pelinka have had a working relationship for 20+ years dealing with the Lakers' biggest star, Kobe Bean Bryant. Nico Harrison has reportedly not seen his role as general manager of the Dallas Mavericks as a long-term thing. Nico Harrison also negotiated the shoe deal for Anthony Davis in 2012, is a Nike executive and a lifelong Laker fan. And he's explicitly stated that the best way to go about trading a star like Luka is to find the trade that you want. This is a cover. The owners told him, find us a way to get rid of the Supermax deal. However that comes about, we do not care. Doing that is tricky at best and downright criminal, illegal at worst. So to be able to find the worst plausible trade, Nico had to look for players who wouldn't be asking for a crazy extension 3 to 4 years from now. His specified timeline.
Future to me is 3-4 years from now.
Who the other team might have been before LA, I really don't know. Looking at the top 20 players in the NBA, the one with the least amount of financial value is, the 20th ranked player, Domantas Sabonis, but that wouldn't make any sense. So I'm at a loss. Let me know what you think in the comments. But after the first trade fell through, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Nico, with strong ties with Rob, the Lakers, and AD, decided this would be the worst move to pull for Luka. And I guess that makes sense. 3 to 4 years from now, AD will be an unrestricted free agent. He's also 31 years old and famous for being made out of glass at the age of 35. There's just no way that he's gonna command max level money. By the way, Caleb Martin as well. His contract expires the same time as AD's, so clearly, this is intentional. Fact of the matter is, the Mavericks made a downgrade trade and ended up with Anthony Davis, who didn't actually seem that bothered about it. Neither did LeBron. But Luka, the fans, disarray. Shambles. And our question still isn't fully answered. Why? Why spend $3.5 billion to just tank your team? It doesn't make sense, but it will. Hold on. Let's talk about the last time that the Adelsons were involved with a basketball team. Long story short, they violated U.S. trade law in China. Yeah, the Adelsons have made their fortune mainly upon the peninsula of Macau, China's gambling capital. Think of it like Las Vegas, but on steroids. And the Adelson family has their fingerprints all over it, to the point where the late, not great, Sheldon Adelson claimed to be the biggest foreign investor in China. In 2007, they attempted to buy a struggling basketball team in the Chinese Basketball Association, the Shanxi Topsun, and relocated to a town near Macau so that the fans of the team could take a 15-minute ferry from the mainland, where casino gambling is illegal, to Macau right before or after a game. Now, the commissioner of the CBA at the time wanted nothing to do with gambling in his league. It was banned, illegal. So, what did the Adelsons do? Pay an independent person $6 million to buy the team, and then give them an additional $8 million to run it. Completely off the books. They weren't successful in relocating the team, so they eventually shifted to sponsorships. But a few years later, after extensive investigations from the SEC, the Adelson company, Vegas Sands, was fined $9 million for violating the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. By now, you've probably heard the theory that's been running around Twitter involving a potential Dallas relocation, penned by Dallas lawyer Chris Cradaville. It did catch fire on Twitter, and for the right reasons. Cradaville is saying that the Mavericks are intentionally throwing away the team's top assets in order to encourage the Texas legislature legislature to legalize gambling in order to create Texas's biggest gambling/sports arena resort, with the Dallas Mavericks front and center.
The Adelson family has, for the last several Texas legislative sessions, even before they owned the Mavericks, really fought to get gambling approved in Texas. They've tried everything they can from a positive point of view. They are literally the largest donors to the Texas governor, Greg Abbott. They have spent tens of millions of dollars to try to get gambling approved in the state of Texas so they can move forward with this ambitious plan to build a huge resort casino with the new Mavs arena at its heart, at its center. Because the American Airlines Center is an aging facility, and the Adelsons have been very upfront about it since buying the team. They want a new arena no later than 2031, and they want that arena to be part of a destination casino. But they need the legislature to act.
Okay, so let's get this straight. A non-local owner needs a new arena in their town, and there's no plans in place to fund a new one at the moment. Doesn't that sound familiar? The Seattle Supersonics, back in the late 2000s, were under the exact same predicament. Long story short, the Sonics weren't able to fund a new arena because the citizens of Seattle didn't want to pay taxes for one. Clay Bennett, a guy from OKC, who bought Seattle from Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz, used this dilemma as leverage to convince David Stern to move the team from Seattle to Oklahoma in a shocking turn of events that still affects the city to this day, a decade and a half later. I made a documentary on the aftermath. Check it out. It's super cool. Okay, that's the last plug, I promise. The reason that the league was able to accept the move in the first place was because the Seattle citizens' patience with their sports teams, especially the Sonics, was running thin. They were some of the sorriest cats in the league at the time, which really bolstered the case for them to leave. No one was really watching the Sonics because they were buns, so why should they get a new arena? Seemed to be the sentiment. The mayor of Seattle at the time, who was one of the main guys doing the negotiations, hadn't been to a game for like a year at the time of negotiation. There was no dog in the fight because the ownership group killed the dog. This disillusionment and apathy was one of the key strategies that Clay Bennett used to relocate the team. And it's not too far of a stretch to say that the Adelson family is doing the exact same thing. The Mavericks lost 1 million followers on Instagram after the trade. Mavs fans are becoming Lakers fans. The whole city hates the management, in particular one man, Nico Harrison, right? Now think about the state of affairs now and think about the future. What happens when Kyrie and/or AD gets hurt for a 15 to 20 game stretch and Dwight Powell is left to fend for himself? Or they get swept in the first round? Or they become a middling team with no future, no present, and a past that was ripped from them? I mean, they stop caring. And over a 3 to 4 year time period, as Mavs fans start caring less and less about their team's future, it becomes harder and harder to propose funding for a new arena. And if you're still not convinced, by the way, listen to this.
I think it's going to look like in the next legislative session, 2027, maybe even 2029, because again, we're talking about a 2031 deadline to get this done. They're going to say, you give us what we want. You give us approval for a casino in the Dallas area, or we're taking the team to Las Vegas.
History gives the Texas legislature reason to be scared. The Adelsons have all the pull in Las Vegas. The NBA wants a team there. And if they can't get a deal done for a new arena, Las Vegas can. Anyways, the threats of the Mavericks leaving should be enough to scare them. Seattle has already suffered for so many years without a team, and it still hurts those guys to this day. You just can't have a repeat of that as the city or state government. The Adelsons have already proven that they'll do whatever it takes to get their way. Who's to say they didn't instruct Nico Harrison to pull this off, to commit social suicide in order to get their way, to try and destroy the Mavericks franchise, to make their star player cry in the middle of the night to get their way? They probably said to Nico, listen, we're gonna do this with or without you. If you refuse, we're gonna fire you. If you accept, you're gonna be all right. You're gonna be taken care of, even if we have to fire you to scrub the image of the Dallas Mavericks clean. It's a wicked, wicked business, folks. And as far as governors go, the Adelsons are some of the wickedest. So next time you see the Luka trade, don't look at Nico Harrison. Look above. Look a little higher to see who ripped the hearts out of Dallas to make a couple bucks. Thanks for watching.